Hi everyone! So today I'm going to do a book review on a recent book that I read, and it's called World Without End by Ken Follett. So basically I read this book because a few days ago a TV series started on, I think, Channel 4, which is a UK channel that we also get here, and the show is The Pillars of the Earth. It ended up that The Pillars of the Earth is actually the first or it's like the prequel, well, not the prequel, it's like the book also based by Ken Follett that they had made into a TV show, and I really enjoyed it's like a mini series, and I really enjoyed that. So I looked up Ken Follett and, you know, online to see what other books he wrote, and I ended up reading the sequel to The Pillars of the Earth. Now, if you have never heard of The Pillars of the Earth, I highly recommend that you actually read that book because I think it's supposed to be better than World Without End. That's what I've read from reviews and stuff. I just didn't want to read it because I'd already seen the mini-series on TV, so I kind of already knew the story, and I just don't really like reading books that I've seen the movies of or whatever. And the reason I'm talking about that is because World Without End, which is the book that I actually ended up reading, is the sequel, well, sort of the sequel to Pillars of the Earth. And I mean, it's not a sequel in the sense that it's continuing the same story, but it takes place in the same town, which is Kingsbridge, which is a fictional town that's set someplace in kind of rural or countryside England. And the second book, so World Without End, is supposed to take place about 200 years later after Pillars of the Earth, but the characters are all new, so they're kind of like descendants of the characters in the previous book. There's basically 4 main characters, and the book starts, or the story starts, when they're all very small children, and they witness kind of this scene in the forest where this man fights off, like this man is running through the forest and like he almost gets killed by these attackers, but they don't know why. So there's like this big secret surrounding why, you know, why this happened. So then the story evolves from these 4 kids who witnessed this scene in the forest and their life during this time. And I think the book is like during the 1400s, but it's again in the Middle Ages, and the story starts kind of just before the outbreak of the bubonic plague, and then as the book progresses, like the story of the plague comes in, like the plague affects the whole town. And what's interesting about this book also is that the story of the 4 children who were the initial witnesses of this event in the forest, what happened there, they all lead completely different lives. One of them ends up turning into kind of like a nobleman. One of them is like a worker, like he's also a builder. So that, yeah, he also builds things like bridges and stuff like that. The other one is a woman who is sort of from an upper class family. She's not nobility, but she is like the daughter of a very wealthy merchant in the town and very like respectable person. And the last person, or one of the other main characters, is a very poor woman who's born into like the very lower peasant classes, and she, you know, comes from a very poor family, very turbulent background. She has like a very abusive father. While I was reading the book, it really teaches a lot about the Middle Ages, like how the different classes were set up. Like there was the king, obviously, was at the top, and then came right away the church, who had huge land holdings, and then came like the nobility class with all the, you know, the earls and all these, and the knights and all that, so all the nobility class, and then came like the wealthy merchants, and then way down below were like the peasants and the serfs, who were pretty much indentured laborers and who couldn't leave the land. Some of them didn't even have land. And yeah, so it talks a lot about, well, it doesn't talk about that specifically, but it kind of gives you a feeling of how it was back then, how the peasants had like absolutely no say in the governance aspect, and like how they were completely at the mercy of their landlords, who were often, you know, from the nobility class. And it's kind of interesting to learn about it in the sense that, you know, it's all these different stories of different people and their experience through life. And there's so much that happens in this book. It's not just, it's kind of hard, like, I think there's not really one main story. There's lots of different kind of stories. There's also a love story between 2 of the main characters, and they're, you know, they're trials and tribulations on being together, but somehow they can't be together, so they're always pulled apart again. And then there's also, you know, there's other aspects discussed, like how, you know, how women were at the mercy of being called witches, and like how women were not able to be doctors, and like all these kind of other aspects of medieval life are kind of addressed in this book. And it's really interesting to read. Like, I loved the characters. Like, the characters are quite well developed. There's definitely like the heroes, and then there's villains, so that's kind of makes it really fun to read. For me, I went through it pretty quickly. Like, I was able to finish it pretty quickly because I was so engrossed in the story of all the different characters. And it's told from, I think it's called third person omniscient, so it's not like I did this today and blah blah blah. It's not told from the first person narrative, it's third person. So, and because there's so many different stories, it's like you know, in one chapter you are delving into the world of one person, the next chapter it's someone else, and at the end all the stories kind of tie together. If you haven't seen the mini series, I would definitely recommend that you first read The Pillars of the Earth, because the story in that is amazing too. And I have been watching, yeah, the TV mini series, which I really like. There's some really good actors in it, Eddie Redmayne, Rufus Sewell, and I don't know, a few others. They're not like super famous actors, but I think they do a really good job of, you know, bringing their characters to life. And right now I have two books that I want to start. One is The Book Thief by, oh god, I forget the author's name. But that's kind of like a story. It's something to do with like the Holocaust. I haven't started it, so I'm not sure, but I've heard it's good. The Book Thief. And the other book that I have that I wanted to start is the Outlander series by Diana Gabaldon. And yeah, it's just, I think that one is a little bit similar. It doesn't take place in the Middle Ages, but it's like another kind of historical fiction. So that is going to be my book tip of the day or whatever. So I'll have the links down here to the actual books if you want to check them out, if it sounds interesting. And I will get back to you on the books that I'm currently reading when I finish them. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you very soon. Bye bye.